Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, it's so true that you never really know what you've lost until it's gone. And if you can hear the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with, once again, as always, my name is Dave Voigt. I am your host for this podcast where we sit down and talk with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and pick their brains not only about current projects, but state of the business, what got them started, influences, and the whole nine yards. If you need a reminder to subscribe to us, please follow us on the Apple Podcasts, the Spotify Podcasts, and you can find every single episode archived over at our YouTube channel. I have to stop smacking my lips. I tend to do that. But, and, I did it again. But please don't forget to subscribe to us on the social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at either In The Seats or It's Podcast One for all the updates. And please visit us where it all began over at intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest movie reviews, news, coverage, and everything else under the sun. On today's episode, we're getting a little somber. We're talking with Director Garret Price, who is behind the film Love Antosha, which is premiering this Friday night with our friends over at Hollywood Suite, and it is a stunning and really sort of emotionally wrought documentary that portrays the life and career of Anton Yelchin, who as many of you probably know, in case you don't, we lost him far too soon due to a tragic accident, and he really was one of those actors and one of those artists who you could really see big things from. And this film really does highlight how special of an artist Anton really was. And when we talked with Garret, we talked about we talked a lot about Anton, but we talked about sort of tackling this difficult subject and sort of projected where he might have been going forward and what his legacy is on the business, because really when you look at it, it's an impactful one, because he was a special kind of artist who has really influenced a lot more people than you might expect, and it's a very eye-opening doc on that front, which I think a lot of people are going to enjoy, especially fans. But don't miss it this Friday on Hollywood Suite, and enjoy our talk with Garret. Now, I mean, obviously, first off, congratulations on the film. I absolutely loved it. And I mean, I think the thing that really struck me was not only how kind of sad it made me, but also kind of happy it made me to get to know a little bit more about him at the same time. Can you walk me through sort of the initial inspiration to be like, okay, I've got to be the one to tell this story?
Yeah, I knew from the get-go that I wanted this to be a story about life and not a death. That was really important for me. I didn't know Anton personally. The way I always tell people that Anton found me to tell his story. I was approached through a good friend of mine, a filmmaker named Director Garret, who made a film called Like Crazy with Anton in it years ago. Anton's parents reached out to Drake when they started to explore this idea of possibly finding a filmmaker to tell his story because of his relationship with Anton. Drake convinced them that he wasn't the right person. He was too close to Anton to do his story justice. You need an objective filmmaker. And he wanted to introduce them to me and for me to direct this, and he come on as a producer. And I was hesitant at first, truthfully, because I didn't know Anton. I knew of the tragedy that happened. I knew some of the films he was in, but I didn't know if his story would work as a documentary feature film. And I sat one afternoon with his parents and they just unloaded his life story on me and shared his archive. And I was hooked. And not only did I know that there was definitely enough material to tell a documentary, there needed to be a documentary about him. Yeah. And that's kind of where it started. But like I said, I learned about Anton as I was making this movie. So I wanted to I wanted to reflect that in the film itself. I wanted people to feel the same way I was feeling, learning things about him, as they watch this movie, like surprises around every corner, basically.
No, totally. Totally. And I mean, I love that you say that because, I mean, obviously you had to be that sort of 1 degree of separation away from Anton and sort of his circle to be able to sort of craft it properly. And I'm kind of curious, like when you really started getting into the meat of it all, was everyone sort of across the board on board with it? Because I mean, this is a very personal and sort of nice film about his life, as opposed to sort of the bio doc pick that maybe people would have expected could be.
Yeah, it is, I was nervous because his parents were a part of this project, but from the beginning, they gave me the keys to the kingdom. They understood the importance of letting a proper story be told about their son, warts and all, showing both sides of the coin, so to speak. It humanizes Anton, and Anton, I think, is such a truthful actor and honest, and he knows the importance of telling an honest, real story that came from somewhere, and it was obvious it was his parents. They understood, the way this film works is to tell the whole story as much as I could. It was hard to find people talking about the darker stuff about him because he was adored by so many. The darker stuff was the stuff from him, and having access to his writings and all his personal stuff, that was really important to me, to tell the story from his point of view as much as possible also. So that's where I really got a sense of him, was through his writings. And that's how I knew instantly that was the device I wanted to use to kind of carry me through the whole film, as these letters he would write or his journal entries to kind of take me from the beginning to the end.
Well, and I mean, just to track sort of his younger years and to sort of be able to see just how engaged he was with the art form, it's fascinating to really watch it unfold. I'm kind of curious, as you were sort of, I want to say, hip deep in the archives, like, is there anything you kind of discovered, not just about him, but maybe even in general? Because just I'm really again struck by just the story arc that the film takes.
Yeah, well, I knew this was a coming of age story. You know what I mean? It really is. But like, his coming of age story is through movies itself and the art of making films. Like, Anton had his first kiss making a movie. He got drunk for the first time making a movie. So he experienced all these experiences we all experienced, growing up, but for the love of cinema. And I thought that was so cool. And and that's the very first batch of archive I saw was in the film where he's getting drunk for the first time for Alpha Dogs in preparation. He's sneaking alcohol. And I was like, this is incredible. He's filming himself and he's having this experience, but for the love of making movies, because he's never experienced getting drunk before. He had a scene he had to get drunk in. So I just sat there and watched this. I was like, that's when I was like, okay, I'm making this movie, is after watching that batch of footage. But yeah, I discovered stuff every day about myself making this movie. I how to be a better father, better child to my parents. I have 2 young children. I would come home every day just wondering why they don't treat me the way Anton treats his mom. I learned how to always like push myself, not to be afraid to fail, always be exploring and always, be curious, just like him. And he's with me to this day. Every time I make something now, Anton, he's just this incredible person that not enough people got a chance to know, and I hope this film does its job and people are discovering who he was as a person.
And I mean, there really was, we really got this sage sense of somebody who was not just aware of the art that he was working on and working in, but also just the industry as a whole at the same time. Because I mean, it was amazing just to see his evolution, and then see him when he's older towards the end, and people still calling him an up and coming star. I can see the look on his face. It's like, I've been around for 10 years. Why are you calling me up and coming?
Yeah, there's definitely a frustration there. And I don't think it was because he wanted to be a bigger star than he was. I think it was more like he's putting so much work into filmmaking, into cinema. It didn't come. People are like, oh, it came so easy. It didn't. He worked at it hard. It didn't come easy to him. Acting and writing and filmmaking. He worked his ass off, and and I think to be called that, labeled this up and coming person, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For his amount of work and studying he did of old films and stuff like that, it could be frustrating. But I don't think it got to him too bad, because he just loved making movies, and I think it shows from the breadth of work he did. I mean, he's done more work than most people do in a complete lifetime.
What do you think spurred on that work ethic? Because I mean, he seemed very geared up to make sure that the illness didn't sort of define him. Was that it, or do you think it was just more a sense of wanting to master the craft?
I think it's a mixture of everything. I think it's just I think part of it, it's hard to say, because I've never been in that situation, knowing that this possibility of having a shorter life. Do you want to accomplish as much as possible in the time given? But I think he was never going to let his illness define him, or slow him down, regardless. And if anyone would have beaten CF, it would have been him. Honestly, like, he worked so hard to not let it slow him down. But also, I think just this, I think, like you said, like this love for the craft. I don't think he ever saw himself mastering it.
Right.
But just, I think just embracing it and exploring all dimensions of it, and I think, and what comes across in the movie, I think his next step in progression would have been a filmmaker himself, directing. I think that was all geared up to go, and I think he'd be on his probably 10th movie if he were still around today right now, because he was that ambitious. And that,
when you were sort of reaching out to people to be in the film, to talk about him, especially his co-workers and other actors, there was such a sense of sincerity when they talked.
Yeah.
I never got a sense that people were just participating in a Hollywood documentary. This felt very personal to them. Was that true when you were sort of going out to people and pitching them?
Absolutely. And going in to do the interviews, I wanted them to be as personal as possible. I brought me, a camera guy, or a DP, and a sound person, and just nothing over stylized, very simple, in people's homes, wherever they felt safe. And it comes across. The interviews are very unguarded. They're very raw and honest. And I didn't even, and everybody wanted to participate. I think it helped having his parents as part of this project.
Yeah.
It helped having, the whole Star Trek crew were all on board right away. And it was like a family, that group. And it's funny, when I was doing the actual interviews, I didn't really notice how raw and honest and unguarded they were until I got in the edit bay. Right. I would just watch their eyes, and they'd tell these stories, and they would start talking about their time with Anton or an anecdote. And I would just hold on their eyes, because you can see so much more going on in their heads, thinking about time they spent with this person they loved so much, and the impact he had on their lives. For someone so young to have the amount of impact on so many seasoned actors. And I'm talking, as you see in the movie, from Martin Landau, all the way down to young up and coming actors. Like, it's funny. And even as I started taking this movie out in the world, I started to meet so many people who, especially on the press side, who had interviewed Anton before, or had met him in a line of a movie or something. And it's like, if you knew Anton for 5 minutes or 5 years, he left this everlasting impact on your life, the conversation you had on him. And it's like, who else can I say that about? I mean, I don't remember anyone I've talked to in my past, but everybody remembered their time with Anton Yelchin, and it's incredible, that presence I think someone can have on you.
Well, and it was funny because, I mean, and this is even a personal story for me, because I got a few minutes with him during Only Lovers during TIFF, and I was like, this guy is next level. Like, I just really got this sense of somebody who wanted to push the art form of cinema in every way that he could possibly think of, and it was kind of inspiring just to sort of to see it, because you don't see it every day.
Right. He was so present in all his interviews, and you don't get that, with people. Every interview with Anton was different. Also,
Yeah.
It's incredible. Even if he's on a press release, a press tour, every interview is different. I think a lot of actors have these cookie cutter answers to things.
Yeah.
Anton, too deep for his own good, but it's funny that you say that, because as I started taking this film out and doing a lot of press, every journalist would have their Anton story, and it ended up the tables would turn. Instead of me talking about the movie, they talk about their time with Anton. I think it's incredible. I love hearing those stories.
How do you par this down? Because I've got to imagine you've got hours and hours of footage of people just sort of pouring their hearts out about him.
It was tough. The hardest part was the interviews that are on the cutting room floor. I've probably cut more Oscar winners out of this movie than show their face than any movie ever been made. It's incredible. But that was the hardest part. But I don't think any feelings were hurt. Like I said, everyone just wanted to do whatever they could to help get his story out to the world, and help, maybe heal his parents a little bit with this project.
And I mean, it's a portrait of a guy who, I mean, obviously grew up in the business, which historically has screwed up so many people, but it didn't seem to do that for him. And I mean, I think we really got the sense that the art of acting and the art of movie making is kind of what got him through those weird points. Because, I mean, let's face it, when you're 15, 16, up to your 20s, you're going to have some dark, weird moments. That's just life.
Yeah. I think, with Anton, I think you're right. I think having those outlets helped. I think having a solid relationship with his parents helped. Having lifetime friends outside of the industry helped. I think having all those, those external forces within this crazy Hollywood world, and his ascension he was making, in that world, just kept that proper balance for him to, not get lost in it all, and it's remarkable. It doesn't happen with many young actors as they transcend through the ranks of Hollywood.
And I mean, it's really this weird thing, because like I said at the beginning, I was happy to sort of get more of the story, but I was so sad at the same time. And I mean, I think the moments from the clip from House of D, when it's him and Robin, that's literally the moment where I was just like, oh, that's the one that got me. And I'm kind of curious, as you're kind of putting this all together, how conscious of those moments were you, that there were going to be moments in the film, no matter who they are or what they are, that people were going to well up and go, oh fuck.
I know. Yeah, it's hard. It was hard because I didn't want this premonition of what was going to come at the
right.
end. It was difficult to find that balance. But at the same time, I didn't want to shy away from some of these incredible moments he had. And like I said, the movie's told purposely in a very linear fashion.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's a coming of age story. I wanted Anton's life came up through the movies. Like the clips of the movies are all supposed to work in, in two different ways, not just to show his work as an actor, but they also say something deep about his life. That was really important to me. I didn't want to just be a clip show movie where, hey, he did this, show a clip, hey, he did that, show a clip. Each one was really important for me to kind of work on different levels. So, some of these, like the one with Robin Williams, it was difficult knowing that like both of them are not with us today. But I think a lot of people, as they watch the film, which I found, is they forgot he was going to pass away at the end. You get caught up in this life. And he feels alive. And I think that again, like, I wanted to tell from his point of view. I wanted it to be his words, him taking on this journey, and that was really important to me to do that. And when the tragedy happens at the end, it should hit you like a ton of bricks, like it hit all of us, I think.
But also, it's not defined by it either. I'm very glad that the end of the film didn't sort of lean on that too much, because at least it gave us sort of a bit of a sense of like, don't focus on that, focus on who he was.
Yeah, exactly. And like, if there's any message I think Anton would want you to anybody get out of this movie, is live every second to the fullest, keep pushing yourself. And that's what this movie is all about. Those are the themes of this movie. And call your parents or your kids as much as possible, I think.
Yeah. Now, I mean, ultimately, what I'm always curious, what got you sort of started in this business? Because I mean, I go through your IMDb page, I see a lot of editor credits. Like, was that sort of the foot in the door, or was filmmaking always sort of the end result for you?
No, I still consider myself an editor by trade. I am an editor by trade. That's what I started doing. That's what I love doing the most out of all of this. This directing side of things just kind of happened, and I'm enjoying it. But the moment I enjoy the most is in the edit bay, because that's especially a documentary. That's where these stories are told. That's where I feel most comfortable. But yeah, and I also, I've been lucky enough where I go back and forth between narrative and documentary as an editor.
Right.
And I think they both inform each other a lot now, especially more than ever.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
This day and age. I think that's, people always ask why they think there's this golden age of documentaries. It's because it's like people have figured out documentaries should have 3-act structures and be treated like narrative films. That's why they work now, and and narrative films are becoming more like documentaries. They're kind of, there's this hybrid now. And I think that I love being able to switch back and forth, so that's what I enjoy the most. And I just started directing my next doc, which I'm excited about. And it's something that I will always find myself going back in as an editor also with. Yeah. So I love the process.
Can you boil down sort of that moment in your life where you decided, okay, I want to be in this business, this is what I want to do, to like a single moment or even a single movie that you maybe have seen growing up?
Yeah, I think Almost Famous was the movie that I love. Okay. And I think it's because I always love putting music to images, and like that movie does it so well. It's funny, when we premiered Love Antosha at Sundance, Cameron Crowe was there with the David Crosby doc, and he was like on the same press line as we were that whole day. So every spot we got to hang with him. I got to kind of give my love of that film and the importance it had on my life as a filmmaker. But I think that's the one. The other I have this picture in my office of my father worked in the advertising agency, and I've got a picture of him in the 70s directing Orson Welles for a Paul Masson wine commercial.
Oh wow!
And yeah, he was part of that campaign, and that's always been kind of this like cool little thing, thing that's pushed me also as my father. So I love storytelling, and I've been lucky enough to do it as a living now, and it's been,
how important is it, do you think, to be able to survive in this business, to have those multifaceted skills? Because you edit, you're directing now. Anton was obviously this multifaceted, fascinating dude. And like you say, if he was still with us, he'd be doing God knows what and winning awards and getting praise and the whole 9 yards. How important is it to sort of have not just the one skill of acting or editing or whatever, but to have multiple skills?
I think it's very important. I think the moment you stop trying to push yourself or stop learning things or trying things and settle, it's the moment you're gonna get left behind. It's hard work. Like I said with Anton, it was hard work being an actor. It's hard work being a filmmaker, being an editor. It's like if you don't keep pushing yourself, put yourself out there, then you're gonna get left behind. And even making this new film I'm doing, I had to get myself out there and convince people that I'm the right person to do it. So it's learning as much about the business as possible. Jumping from the editing seat to the directing seat, which it causes to you basically be a producer all of a sudden. Also, it was definitely out of my comfort zone. And that was the part that I didn't love about it at first, was the producing side. I was getting pulled away from the creative, dealing with the business side of things, and that's this hard thing directors I didn't realize had to juggle with, as much. I just wanted to keep getting back in the edit bay and make the movie like I'd always been able to do. I had to come out from behind the curtain with this. But again, having that experience now, I feel much more confident with this new project. It's super important. I don't think you should ever pigeonhole yourself as one thing. Always learn new skills, always learn about what other people you work with are doing also, and the amount of work they're doing. Is I think there's this mutual respect. The more you know about someone else's job, the more I think it's the more understanding you can be when you work with somebody. It's such a collaborative art form, so it's important to know as much as you know.
Well, and it does speak to the importance as well of just not giving up and not saying no. And I mean, I think there's something in the film that really just highlights that, because I mean, you know, somebody like J.J. Abrams doesn't have free time. Somebody like J.J. Abrams makes time to sit down with you, and that's only comes out of you asking, and that's so much of what this business is about.
Absolutely, and it was again, like, I'm so grateful for that, for all of them. JJ, Chris, Zach, Zoe, they all came to events to help promote the movie with their own time afterwards. They knew how important it was to get this movie out in the world, and how hard it is nowadays getting these smaller films out in a very crowded field, you know, especially in the documentary space. So they were sort of along the line. You know, even Simon would come and watch rough cuts and give notes and help out on that end. So it was awesome, and they all wanted to, you know, do whatever they could to help get Anton's story out there.
What do you think his ultimate legacy is going to be? Because I mean, especially after watching this, I knew he was an interesting guy, but I mean, I think I got more and more layers just seeing on it, because it's not only an introduction, it's a love letter at the same time. It's one of those things that can bring you into his life, but then also enrich it at the same time.
Yeah. But what was your first question? I didn't hear the question though.
Well, just in terms of what do you think his legacy is? Yeah. Because I mean, the film really does have a lot of layers.
Yeah, you know, and like so many people are like, oh, he's like the James Dean of our generation, or like he's a true modern day Renaissance man. I'm like, yeah, I think all those are true, but like I think if there's anything, I think he just, like, hard work pays off. I think if people just go and watch his filmography and go and see all these projects, whether it was a small little film or a big film, Anton was almost always the best part of every film. It's incredible. That, trust me, I've watched every single one making this project, and there's lots of them. You know, there's lots that no one ever heard of.
Yeah.
And I think he would appreciate you to go and explore these projects also, you know, because again, I think for Anton, it was never like a one for them, one for me type of thing with the big movies and the small movies. I think he loved the process, whether it's a small project, whether it was a art film, which he did a lot of those with friends or people. He do all his free time. So I think just his sheer body of work and the hard work he put into it. And I think if he went and watched these things, not just for his own sake, but for the people he worked with, the filmmakers that he worked with and collaborated with on these projects, I think he'd be very grateful for that. So I don't know if that's a legacy, you know, but I think this film, I hope, is a tool to encourage people to go learn more about this.
No, for sure. No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I guess just to put a bow on all this, as you are probably aside from his parents, probably one of the foremost Anton Yelchin experts in the world at this stage. Yeah. What would you say is your sort of desert island Anton Yelchin movie, sort of the one you think you probably couldn't live without?
Well, don't tell Drake, because he's a good friend of mine. And he did I think Green Room is just, I think he was really coming into, you know, himself in this next kind of stage as an actor, you know, and where he was going to go. And that's why, you know, I think I was so excited about getting Nick Cage as a narrator in this film, you know, to read his letters, because I think Anton was kind of on this trajectory of a very Nick Cage career.
Yeah, totally.
And I think they kind of marry, and not only did they have a personal relationship, and Anton respected the hell of him as an actor, but I think Nick does so many projects and is such a cinephile himself, actually. And he'll try these, you know, he takes risk. He's not scared to fail on something. And that's all Anton was about. So, you know, and Nick's not the only one, even like Willem Dafoe that Anton had in his life that I think mirror the type of career he could have possibly had as an actor. So
no, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I gotta say, I think the film was so engrossing. It took me about a third of the way in to go, oh shit, it's Nick Cage doing the voiceover. It really did right away.
And that was totally intentional. It doesn't come into like the 30 minutes into the film I started using. I never wanted to lean on celebrity to tell a story. I never wanted to be like, oh, I've got Jennifer Lawrence, so I'm going to have her throughout this whole movie. I wanted to introduce people when Anton met them in his life.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean? That was really important to me. Again, this is his story, and his life story.
Well, and you know what? I think you've made a fantastic film that's really going to open up people to sort of diving into the artist that he was, because he really was this fascinating guy that people need to know more about.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for spreading the word.
Well, I thank you for the time again today, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. Have a good one, man.
Thank you,
Stay safe and healthy.
Yeah,
Right.
you, man.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.